So now we're in another wave of riots. Going to be happening in cities across the country, most likely. Now, on the one hand, I have to say, I do believe that when these BLM rioters do the stuff that they do, they're unintentionally cutting campaign commercials for the Trump campaign. I mean, they're helping the cause of Trump getting reelected by showing the American people, especially those who are not brainwashed Democrats, right? Those voters that maybe would go either way, that kind of believe Joe Biden's not such a bad guy and he's been around a long time, but, you know, Trump was good on the economy. They see the lunatic Democrats marching through the streets, screaming in people's faces when they're just sitting there eating, screaming at people as they're trying to sleep in their homes at night, you know, wake up, there's no justice, no peace, all this stuff that they're doing. People see that and they say, I'm probably not going to want to reward that kind of childish and destructive behavior. I'm not going to say that I like that, and not going to give my vote to the party that clearly represents that, which is what the Democrat Party does. But beyond that, I want to note that there are inherent contradictions in the BLM movement that they're never forced to address, that the people that are out there marching are never asked about. You know, you'll notice they don't do a lot of man on the street stuff with BLM, do they, the reporters? In fact, we heard before from Julio Rosas that they don't want reporters to show what they're really doing. Right? That's considered, and they expect obedience because they think journalists are on their team, and so they expect that they'll be helpful in the propaganda of these movements as mostly peaceful, which is what, generally speaking, the journos do. They pretend that they're mostly peaceful protests, even though they're not. Not a mostly peaceful protest when you have people passing out free riot shields right after a grand jury makes a decision about charges. Mostly the right decision, but as I said, I don't think that the cop should have faced the 3 charges of wanton endangerment. I think that's just a total cave. That's cowardice. That's trying to buy off the mob. That's all that is. There's no justification for that. Looking to charge one of the cops with something so they didn't let them all off. That's all that is. That was the decision that was made. And I'm sure the grand jury felt that way too. Okay, well, we don't want to let this was bad, so someone has to get punished for something. That's not justice. But on this point about what is fair, what is right, and what is just, I would note that the BLM movement should be asked about some things. I mean, they should have to explain to people, why is it that they do this stuff and they commit injustices while claiming that they fight for justice. They attack innocents in the name of protecting the innocent. They don't see these contradictions. Even if they could, they don't care. This is about raw power, and only a fool can't see that. Why doesn't everyone understand this right off the bat? You can't claim to be a movement about justice and then go and destroy the property of people who have done nothing to you. They're going and attacking businesses. They're breaking windows. They are stealing money, right? Destroying property is a form of theft because you are causing debt. You are taking money from that. When you break a storefront window, you are taking money from that store, from the people who own it and people who work there. You're taking from them. Now, we have to get back to what kids learn in kindergarten here about keep your hands to yourself, don't take other people's stuff. BLM movement seems to have forgotten all that, doesn't care about any of that. You cannot claim to be a movement concerned with justice and do injustice regularly, repeatedly, unapologetically, which is what BLM does. They say that they're fighting for justice with these acts of destruction and intimidation against innocent people. But in reality, these Biden voters might as well be making Trump campaign commercials because Ohio soccer moms are not big on mob violence when they go into that voting booth. I hope they certainly remember that. Something else I hope people remember. Remember when all those big companies in America were bowing down to and begging forgiveness from and paying off a bad faith Marxist movement built on lies that has now led to enormous destruction, immiserated communities, and a number of dead cops? I hope you remember. I hope you never forget. how many companies immediately bent the knee. BLM rioters going around feeling like they're not only supported by the media, but they're funded by corporate America. It's a troubling circumstance, friends. The elites are using the mob against those who stand in the way of total control of those in charge. This is not a new tactic. This has been done in many countries and many times in history in the past. Right? The people that are calling the shots, that have special privileges and tremendous wealth, they get the angry, insecure, unsuccessful mob to start burning down other businesses, to start attacking the political competition, so that the people who are angry are making sure that the people who see what's really going on aren't able to throw out the bums who are making all the decisions at the top. There's a strategy behind this. You know, the Democratic elites, I mean, the greatest fraud of those elites in the activist class is the pretense that they care about working class people. There was a video last night where you saw a protester going up to police officers with a megaphone. This was in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. And he was saying, "Look at you, you're protecting McDonald's. You're an idiot." If the cops weren't there, they would have trashed the McDonald's, berated any employees who were inside, terrified any patrons who were just trying to have a simple meal. And these idiot protesters would feel righteous about it. On an MSNBC, they'd treat them like they were the Freedom Riders. They'd treat them like they were people fighting for civil rights. It's appalling. It's appalling what they do. But this is where we are. This is the society that we live in now. I mean, just imagine for a second if in response to charging Kyle Rittenhouse with first-degree murder, still amazing that that's what ended up happening, but it is where we are. Imagine if Trump supporters in cities across the country rioted, attacked police, destroyed buildings. The lib media, and I mean Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the rest of them, they would demand martial law, suspension of habeas corpus, and order the National Guard to open fire. They'd have no problem with it. No issue with it at all. They would demand it, in fact. You cannot be a movement devoted to justice that commits injustice, which is what they're doing. You cannot explain or justify destroying the businesses, the homes, the peace of mind, the safety of people who happen to live in a city where there happen to be some angry leftists. It's completely unacceptable. And it's why BLM does not deserve your support, does not deserve deference, doesn't deserve respect. It is a destructive Marxist movement based entirely in racial division and resentment and anger that hurts people. It is hurting this country. And the Democrats are using this. It's a catharsis for their Trump derangement syndrome. It's become an outlet for their rage about the fact that Donald Trump has been president and his supporters all still support him, and people think he's done a pretty darn good job. Don't ever forget that this is all tied in together. That this is, for the left, a way to try to seize the moral high ground while they're really just complaining about Trump's America.
Every time this happens, we obsess over details as if there are enough details to make America finally believe that Black folks are worthy of living. The details did nothing for Tamir Rice. They did nothing for Aiyana Jones, who was asleep on a couch. They did nothing for Walter Scott when we saw on video he was running away. And they certainly didn't do anything for Breonna Taylor. The details never seem to be enough to treat our lives as valuable by a system that has a foundation based on our labor and not our humanity. The demand is simple. Stop killing us. We know that Black victims will never be perfect enough for this system. We simply want to be allowed to live, to rest, and to thrive.
That's a black policing reform activist named Brittany Cunningham. And that's a very good example of the poisonous and deranged rhetoric of Black Lives Matter. Does she really think that people don't care about black. That's really her belief. She really thinks that no one cares about black lives. Black police officers don't care about black lives. Members of the black community that are out there saying that they want more security, more police in neighborhoods, they don't care about black. I mean, what really is the charge here? That the system doesn't value black life? There are a lot of people in prison right now for killing black people as well as other people. A lot of people are being punished for this. Right. But what is the central premise, the reason we have the Black Lives Matter movement is the killing of Mike Brown. Mike Brown deserved to be shot by a police officer. Doesn't matter that he was black, doesn't matter what color he is, he deserved what happened under the circumstances as we know them. If you attack someone who is a police officer and try to harm them, they will shoot you, and that is justified. So the movement is founded on a lie, hands up, don't shoot. And then there are successive lies after that. She mentioned Walter Scott, a case in South Carolina. And, as the system doesn't value his life. That cop was charged with murder. That cop's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. What is she missing here? That wasn't it. So she's even talking about cases where people said, yeah, actually, that cop did cross the line. That is excessive force. Guy's life is ruined. Over. So she's throwing in cases like that. No one says that police don't commit abuse. Police are human beings. Police can be criminals. They can be racist. But, we're talking about less than 1/100th of 1% or 1/1000th of 1%. And you're going to throw all the other 700,000 or 800,000 sworn law enforcement officers under the bus all the time because one person does something that sometimes is bad. Sometimes they lie about it and make it sound like it's bad when it's not. But it's stunning. We simply want to be allowed to live. And then we go to how many people are killed every year by police and how many young black Americans are killed by other young black Americans every year. We all know the disparity is about, 6,000 or 7,000 to 10. But because it's the state and it's the system and there's all these political implications around it, they want to focus on the 10 to 15 cases a year under questionable or perhaps even illegal, immoral circumstances where a young black man is shot by police. They focus on those cases, and there's no effort to deal with the thousands and thousands of young black men who are killed, sometimes for just being in the wrong neighborhood, sometimes for having, their hat on in a way that offends some gangbanger or whatever it may be. There's no effort to deal with that. None. This movement ignores the thousands of deaths and focuses on a dozen or 20 a year, maybe 30. I don't know. It depends on the year. And then it's a huge national. We have to go through these national convulsions over this. All under this premise. LeBron James even said this, that we're being hunted literally every time we leave our house. That's a psychosis. That's not true. The state is not hunting black people every time they leave their homes. The state is not hunting anybody every time they leave their homes. This is a lie. But you know what these lies do? They energize, they mobilize, they get people angry. And when you're angry, you're much more susceptible to being controlled. As long as somebody tells you where to focus that anger, you're looking for that outlet. And then that leads to things like what happened last night in Louisville, where you had 2 cops shot. This is what it sounded like as that happened. Play clip 1.
Oh, they shot guns at them. They shooting guns at them, real guns. They're blasting at the police. Hey, watch out, that's shot.
So, gunshots, 2 cops hit, could have been killed. Maybe never see their families again. Not get to live another day. Young black man is in custody for shooting both of them. What do you think he believes about police? I mean, there are police reform experts who are going on TV who are saying things like, we simply want to be allowed to live. We're constantly being killed. This is shrill, insane hysteria. It's not true. The police are not constantly killing unarmed black people. It's a lie. It's a lie. More people die every year from lightning strikes than unarmed black people are killed by police. Fact. Every year in America. So they're complaining about something that is statistically less common than a lightning strike. And they lie about some of these incidents in order to get people even more upset about them than they would otherwise be. But, folks, this is about agitation. This is about undermining our system, undermining our society, dividing us, turning us against each other. It's really very ugly, this whole thing. This whole movement doesn't inspire. It's not about peace and love and bringing people together. It's about anger and rage and division and resentment and envy. The Democrat Party embraces it. The Democrat Party is along with it. And they will hold people up who say things like, here is a former police sergeant who went on MSNBC speaking about the black attorney general and what he said at the press conference yesterday. Play clip 3.
Well, listen, not only is he being intellectually dishonest about that, I find all of his remarks with regards to this whole entire press conference offensive. And let me just speak to this whole celebrity influencer thing. While they can't speak for Kentuckians, let me say this as a black woman. He does not speak for black folks. He's skin folk, but he is not kinfolk. And so just like he thinks they can't speak for Kentucky because he's up there with a black face, he does not speak for all of us. This was not a tragedy. This was a murder. He should be ashamed of himself.
Well, Cheryl Dorsey is wrong, and her analysis is garbage. She doesn't strike me as somebody who knows what the heck she's talking about at all. But she's doing exactly what they want her to do at MSNBC. She's undermining or negating the blackness of the Attorney General of Kentucky. I mean, to make this really about ultimately the left wanting different racial treatment for people in the justice system, right? That if you are black, if you're white, if you're some other ethnicity, there's supposed to be a different set of rules depending on what the left decides. That is a recipe for destroying the entire justice system. That is a recipe for pulling this country apart at the seams. But that's what they want right now. The left is angry. The Democrat Party is angry. And they can't control it. They don't want to control it. And that then brings me to the most, in some ways, insufferable part of all of this are Kamala Harris and Joe Biden now. Oh, prayers up for the police officers who were shot. You know what would be more helpful? If Kamala and Joe stopped defaming cops, stopped giving cover to the lies, and told their voters, told the Biden-Kamala voters out there, don't attack police officers. Way more helpful than their thoughts and prayers. And thoughts and prayers are always fine, but they're actually in a position to do something about this, right? If I'm the surgeon that's called in to do heart surgery, yeah, I might give thoughts and prayers, but that's not all I'm expected to do. I'm supposed to save somebody. Biden and Kamala could save lives, but they don't want to upset their supporters by saying, don't shoot cops.
It is outdated. It is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street. What we have to do, and what we will do, is reimagine public safety.
What kind of bull crap is that? First of all, it's a straw man. No one's saying the only way to make communities safer is to put police on the street, but that is a very important thing to do. You want to make communities safer? Encourage people to get married and stay married. Encourage people to finish high school. Don't tell people the cops are the enemy. These are ways. Encourage parents to raise their children in a 2-parent household. Those are ways. Oh, yes. By the numbers. By the social science. Those are ways to make communities safer. But that's not what people want to hear. No, much more pleasant to the Democrat base to hear that the problem are the cops. The problem are the people who are there to make sure that little old ladies aren't bludgeoned by crackheads on their way to the grocery store. The problem are the cops. Sure they are. What could be more disgusting and disingenuous than this? But libs live in these bubbles, these echo chambers of the various websites and news networks that just tell them this lie. And they'll never be confronted by people on the other side. And then they fall back into the slogans. But do you not believe there's systemic racism? Do you not? These are feelings. These are not arguments. Do you not believe there's a history of oppression in this country? No, that's, of course, yeah, there's oppression, there's racism. But how do we build a society that functions as best as it can, and a society that is ultimately acting in the interests of individual rights and justice with its every act? Well, they don't even think about that, do they? But Harris is so funny. Reimagining public safety. This is taken straight out of like the faculty lounge handbook at Sarah Lawrence College or something. Let's reimagine public safety. What does that even mean? Reimagine it how? And you want to do that while there's 50% increase in shootings in New York City and other cities having big spikes in shootings and murders? Yeah, reimagine it while people are getting killed. Ultimately, the left also thinks the only bad people the left thinks exists are white male oppressor Republicans. They're the only bad people, according to the left-wing ideology. Everyone else who does bad things, it's society's fault. It's because of, some lack of a social program, or, there's a collective responsibility for all the other ills of society. But the only people that are irredeemably evil and bad are white male Republican oppressors. That's it. Everybody else at least has a saving grace. Everybody else is, you can look at the totality of the circumstances. The guy's an MS-13 hitman, but, he had a tough go in the early days in Honduras before he came here illegally, and we didn't take him in. So, we didn't make him a citizen. So really the fact that he's, cutting people's heads off with a machete, let's not blame him. Oh my gosh, you voted for Trump? Evil, bad person, you white male Trump supporter. It's look, what I'm saying. It's true. This is the reality. The libs will always find a way to justify the behavior of other people. And that's one of the great things about being a white male liberal is at least you get a little bit of, you have to constantly bow, and unless you're super rich and connected, and then you kind of just, are the puppeteer pushing around the rest of the Democrats, making them do what you want and pretending, you get to be in the Pelosi role or the Schumer role, right? But if you're a white male liberal, you get to think, well, at least I'm sort of one of the good people. I'm not one of the really terrible people. So that's the reality of the country we live in now. And I just want to say that the reimagining public safety is a phrase that intelligent people could not say without feeling ridiculous. Without knowing that they're just being complete demagogues trying to get people all fired up and angry about something instead of actually dealing with the problems. Speaking of fired up and angry, that's always a good transition on this show. Speaking of fired up and angry, I don't trust this moment of calm we're having in the Supreme Court nomination battle. Something's going on. Something's up. I know they are going to try something. I don't know what it is. I'm thinking about it constantly, trying to figure out what is the angle. I've said to you, yes, there's going to be mass disturbances on the street. They're going to, they're going to call out everything they've got. But they called out pretty much everything they had for Kavanaugh. It didn't work. They came close. People often forget that. If Blasey Ford was the only person they put forward and Kavanaugh had not come out just in an absolute defense of his character and of his soul in front of the country in the way that he did, which is why they were so angry at him, saying, oh, he was so angry. They wanted to watch him. They wanted to watch him collapse and be destroyed. They wanted to see that. They wanted to enjoy that. Instead, Kavanaugh came out as a man and came out firing. God bless him for it. But they threw everything they had at it. They're going to try something here. They're going to try to do something that, I wish I could see it coming so that I could try to prepare conservatives and the right for it and, get word to the White House, even if I could. Well, I mean, I could, but if I knew what it was, I don't know what it is. But we do know that they're not going to let this go easily. Even Elizabeth Warren, it's been a while since we've heard from Elizabeth Warren. Oh gosh, gee golly, I grew up, and my daddy always says I was 1 millionth Cherokee, and I'm from Oklahoma, and let's take the banks and take all the money and give it around to the people that haven't done anything for it. Oh gosh, yeah. Here she is blasting Republicans over the Ginsburg situation, not the Ginsburg situation, it's the Supreme Court seat that is open situation. Play 14.
Ruth Ginsburg was a woman who never let any man silence her. The most fitting tribute to her is to refuse to be silenced and to name exactly what Donald Trump and Senate Republicans are trying to do: steal another Supreme Court seat. This kind of sleazy double dealing is the last gasp of a desperate party that is undemocratically overrepresented in Congress and in the halls of power across our country. The last gasp of a corrupt Republican leadership, numb to its own hypocrisy, that doesn't reflect the views of the majority of Americans or the values that we hold dear. The last gasp of a right-wing billionaire-fueled party that wants to hold on to power a little longer in order to impose its extremist agenda on the entire country.
What is she even saying? I mean, really, I know she thinks, I'm just so upset, and I'm going to I'm going to be yelling and upset about the right-wing billion. What does this even mean? They're trying to steal. How are they stealing what is theirs? Democrats, you're acting like crazy people here, okay? If I own a home and I walk into my home, I'm not trespassing. You can say it's trespassing, but you're wrong. They're not stealing anything. Stealing implies the illicit taking of something from someone else who has a right to have it. It's not stealing. It's a constitutional obligation to fill the seat. I mean, but they're just going to keep lying. This is not hard. There's nothing to stop Republicans. There's no rule. There's no law. There's nothing to stop them from doing this. But they just can't accept it. They won't accept that this is the reality. They won't accept that things have changed a bit. It's really stunning, isn't it? They're completely unhinged over all this, and they won't even rule out Supreme Court packing. Here's Joe Biden. Play 15.
Will you go along with what some Democrats are proposing to expand the court?
What I'm not going to do, and I hope you'll understand, is play the president's game. He wants to change the subject. Instead of about violating constitutional principles by moving forward in the middle of an election, elections have already started. He wants us talking about whether or not we're going to expand the court or we're going to court pack. I'm not going to get into that.
I'm not going to get into that. Joe Biden. You know, they called a lid for his campaign again today, I think by noon. 8 out of 20, what is it? 8 out of 24 days so far. Biden campaign's like, and we're done. It's lunchtime. Done for the day. No events, no interviews, nothing. And now, that's so funny. Now some of the lib journos out there, he's just doing debate prep. Really? He's doing debate prep? This guy hasn't done enough public speaking and debating over. He's got to do debate prep? I mean, yeah, for like a couple of days beforehand, but come on. Really? Yeah, he was doing debate prep. That's why, September, the first week of September, he missed a couple of days because he was doing. Look, they'll cover for this guy no matter what. But they want to leave open all these options so that they can tell their base they're going to do something. But here's the truth, friends. They're gonna pack the court as soon as they think it's in their interest to pack the court. They're not gonna. There's no promise they're gonna make. Remember, we got to this point because Harry Reid blew up the filibuster because it benefited Democrats who were in power at the time. They can't help it. They have a lust for power. They will do whatever they can to increase that power. There are no norms or rules or principles that will be allowed to get in the way. Now they got to live with that. Now they got to live with the consequences of their actions and, take it long and hard. Sorry. Stinks for them. What a shame. Too bad. But I'm telling you they're going to do something. And I'm going to keep focusing. Send me your thoughts on this one. Let me know what you think they're going to do. They cannot, emotionally, psychologically, the Democrats will not be able to process the possibility of a truly right-of-center Supreme Court. It's not going to be like, it's not going to be like putting Ted Cruz on the court. I can tell you that. It's going to be, if a one is far left lunatic, Sotomayor, and 10 is Justice Scalia, right? The court's going to be at like a 6 if we get Amy Coney Barrett. That's the thing. But they're used to it being at like a 3 or a 4. And sorry, that's not written in the Constitution. It's not the way it has to be, Libs. Maybe don't make the court so important.
To serve on the board of a Ukrainian energy company facing serious corruption charges. You were the vice president running point on Ukraine. The average Joe hears that and says, that sounds fishy. What's your understanding of what your son was doing for an extraordinary amount of money?
I don't know what he was doing. I know he was on the board. I found out he was on the board after he was on the board, and that was it. And there's nobody...
Well, you've had a lot of time. Isn't this something you want to get to the bottom of?
No, because I trust my son.
But that doesn't pass the smell test. Like when you're vice president, isn't there a higher standard? Don't you need to know what's happening with your family? Don't you need to put down some guardrails?
Unless there was something that was, there was something on its face that was wrong. There's nothing on its face that was wrong. So look, if you want to talk about problems, let's talk about Trump's family. Come on. This is...
So
These guys are amazing.
So you think that everything that happened was kosher?
There's not one single bit of evidence, not one little tiny bit, to suggest anything done was wrong. You know that, but you keep asking me these questions. It's okay. You're doing what you have to do.
Look at how surly and defensive Biden got in this interview. That was a part of an Axios interview, asking about Hunter Biden, who. Look, Democrats want to pretend that they're all about transparency and accountability and good government, and that's, of course, laughable. But here's one of the reasons why it's laughable. You're running foreign policy for the U.S. government in a country like Ukraine that desperately needs U.S. help. Okay, this isn't like you're the point man for the U.S. relationship with Great Britain, which is kind of like, goes as it is. It's not really going to, the Brits will be okay. There's not going to be some huge change in our policies. Ukraine really needed us. And your son is getting paid, whatever it is, close to $1 million to sit on the board of a company in an area he knows nothing about. It's about the appearance of impropriety, Joe Biden, you moron. He just, not one bit of evidence anything's wrong. No, the evidence is this looks bad. And people lose faith in the system because of it. Right? So just want to say, that's obvious. But even when he gets asked the question, you have to notice, even when he's talking about this issue, it's clear that he is outraged that a journo would even ask him. He's outraged that a journo would even push him on this because they're supposed to be on his team. He's not supposed to get real questions. He's not supposed to be asked real questions. No, of course not. He's supposed to have people that just give him a constant back rub on TV and tell him how amazing he is and how the American people should vote for him. Even though, I firmly believe that he does not have, he does not have the physical, psychological, emotional constitution to be president of the United States, folks. I don't think he's up for the job. I really mean that. I don't say that to be provocative. I think Democrats, some of the people at the top echelon of the Democrat Party, they know this, but he's just supposed to get them past the election, and then they'll figure everything out afterwards. And they're little sheep in the Democrat Party will just go, meh, they'll do whatever they're told, and they'll go along with this. And when President Kamala takes the reins, they're not going to be even a little bit remorseful about this. They're going to say, look at what we pulled off. Ha ha. We stopped Trump from getting 4 more years by putting forward this empty suit buffoon that should be focused on, feeding nuts to the squirrels and reading picture books to his grandkids, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But he shouldn't be president, right? He shouldn't. He should be doing those other things that I said. Instead, he wants the nuclear codes. And Democrats are saying, if you don't give it to him, you're a bad person.